One would be that these tests deserve years and years of a student's attention. You do not need 2 to 3 years of cram school to prepare for these tests. That is excessive, and it comes, I believe, at a cost. We see too many students starting too soon, spending too much time for too long on these tests. The second, I think, myth is that colleges care about the scores as much as students think. In reality, a lot of colleges, they use these scores reluctantly. They know all the ways in which they're problematic. They give colleges a very rough idea of the student's ability relative to their grades, but then rarely are they used to make fine distinctions between students. And I don't think students understand that. Students think a 34 is much better than a 32. Statistically, it's meaningless. The elite colleges are just impossibly competitive on any measure. So I like to use the anecdote of Stanford, where they get hundreds of applicants with perfect test scores, hundreds, 36s and 1600s, and they deny 70% of those students as well. So at the most selective colleges, there is no sort of golden ticket or formula. These grades, these test scores, you're in. Those colleges could do nothing but admit students with perfect scores if they wanted to, and they don't want to. They are looking for students who are interesting and talented in a variety of ways. They're looking for diversity in every sense of the word. I like to say that really strong test scores at selected U.S. colleges are necessary, but they are not sufficient. The University of Chicago was very clear in their announcement that they still expect to receive scores from most of their applicants, and that they still value scores in most cases. But that in the U.S. is tied to a social justice movement where colleges are trying in very tangible ways to lower the hurdles that students who don't go to a school like this one, or don't have access to the kind of work that I do, they are trying to say to those students, we want to receive your application. We have other ways of measuring your ability that aren't as tied to a test that ties to family income. So that's the context at the University of Chicago. It did not get easier to get into the University of Chicago. But more broadly, there's now more than 1,000 U.S. colleges that are test optional. And as a group, they definitely are providing a much broader set of options for students that did not exist 15, 20 years ago. I think some of that is marketing hype. The modern version of the SAT and ACT, if all you're teaching is tricks, that won't take a student very far. The tests are more sophisticated than that. So if you're really helping a student achieve a sizable score increase, you are working on their underlying academic ability. You are teaching them how to take a test. In many cases, you're teaching them how to cope with a test that is multiple choice and that puts them on the clock. So helping them deal with the speed of the test is something that you'll teach. But test prep marketing overstates the utility of tricks or strategies in order to attract clients. They are increasingly irrelevant. There's only 4 colleges that still explicitly require subject tests: Cornell, Harvey-Mudd, MIT, and Caltech, all of whom are renowned for their engineering programs. So the majority of U.S. colleges, they're not required at all, or they would be it's nice to have, but not important. The key thing about subject tests to understand is that they're especially not relevant for students who attend a school like SAS, that has the AB program, the IB program, that has an international reputation as being very competitive academically. From a context like that, subject tests would very often be not relevant. But if you need subject tests, if you believe they would help you, then generally you want to take the ones on which you will do the best. And there's only certain cases, typically engineering programs, where you're told which ones you must take. And I answered this question the other day, a student who thinks that she wants to be pre-med, but her strongest subject test scores are going to be literature and history, and that's fine. PSATs are essentially irrelevant to colleges as well. They're just tests that students take early, so they're useful for students and students' advisors in getting a sense of where the student is starting from. But PSAT scores don't get you into college. This is just a starting point. APs are increasingly important, or of course IBs. And I think students with the full IB diploma would be generally the most competitive students. So I was at a conference this past fall. The College Board does an annual conference, and they had several sessions where they were encouraging college admissions officers to more formally start using AP as admission tests. Historically, APs were not to be for admission, they were to be for college credit. There's a movement to try to recast them as admission tests. What I just said is true, but it does not mean that a student should load up on AP classes above and beyond that which he or she could handle. And there's really a balance students must find. And if that third or fourth AP class is the one that would cause you to have to spend less time on meaningful extracurriculars, that would affect your sleep, your health, your state of well-being, that was too much. Authenticity. So honestly, if that question is too central in their mind, they are less likely to find what it is about themselves that's really important and what colleges would value. And I think students don't appreciate sometimes how much college admissions officers are fellow human beings. And part of what they are doing is they are trying to do two things. One is admit students who they would like to be around in classrooms and in the dining halls and so forth. So people who are kind and thoughtful and interesting, funny, those are all personal traits that matter. The second thing they're trying to do is admit a very diverse class in terms of abilities. So ideally, you would have something about you in terms of a skill or talent that is especially strong or somewhat unusual. And two, you would have developed, your interpersonal strengths and be someone, quite frankly, other human beings enjoy being around, learning from, being in a class with, teaching. And if you look around as a student, you can kind of know who those kids are. Everyone wants to spend time with them versus maybe somebody who is doing extremely well academically but is an unhappy, difficult person. So these are things that colleges are actively trying to determine when they are considering students' applications.